Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey there, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Interesting story from Greg Fitzsimmons about the classic era of Howard Stern. He said a lot of comedians used to cycle through the Howard Stern show. They called it Jackie's Chair because when Jackie Martling left the show, it opened up a spot for people to sit in, usually during the news. It was a very jokey segment. Me and Howard had great chemistry. Kinison would come in and he would have stayed out all night and he'd still be drunk and he'd have a couple of hookers with him. He'd take over the show and it was magic. It was amazing, but that wasn't what I was doing at all. I was just there to be a team player. They wanted to replace Jackie's Chair permanently and they brought in Doug Stanhope. I was one of the guys that brought in a lot. Artie Lang, Jeff Ross. An article in the New York Post said it came down to me and Artie Lang. Obviously, Artie got it, which was well-deserved. He just had a lot more to offer in terms of what he had done last weekend than the guy who was married with 2 kids. Also, he's one of the greatest storytellers of all time. When I didn't get it, Howard told me the door was open. Anytime you want to come on the show, just let me know. And he was true to that. Anytime I've ever asked to come on the show over a 13-year period, I just came on and it was great. Jim Jeffries told Rolling Stone New Zealand about the time in Manchester a member from the audience assaulted Jim. Jim says, I distinctly remember what happened. I got punched in the face and I sort of fall to the ground and then he hit me in the back of the head and the audience came up and rushed him. To this day, if I go out drinking, which I don't do anymore, he's been sober for 3 years. If I go out in Manchester, someone will come up to me and say they were one of the guys that jumped on the stage to defend me. I think I've bought about 30 drinks, but I only saw 4 people get up on stage. Jeffries rallied, and rather than be afraid, he decided to go bigger. And he said, because I was the person who put it up on the internet, what it did do is it sold out that tour. GQ spoke to Lucas Zelnick about his viral TikTok crowd work. In one clip, which has been viewed 6.7 million times, he takes on a growing number of hecklers one at a time at his shows. In another, he banters with a person integrating back into society after a stay at a psychiatric facility. In another, he stumbles into a conversation with a drug dealer who winds up delivering a sales pitch. Lucas tells GQ, I grew up in Manhattan, rich kid. Everyone was going into business and being a CEO and consulting in fancy schools. Zelnick founded Sesh Comedy, a Lower East Side club that he eventually sold so he could tour. He said year 1 was about figuring out what the show that I'm giving is. Year 2 is about making the show better. And now year 3, I'm looking at as coming into my own as who I want to be as a comedian. He does not identify as a crowd work comedian, but he's not offended if other people use the term. A lot of people who come to the shows can even be surprised by how little crowd work I do. The length of my set on tour sort of accordions because I'll try and build a new chunk of material, which will make it longer. But then if I don't like it, it'll get pulled out. Or once I do like it, I'll pull out something old that I don't like. Longer than shorter. So hopefully it improves. Towards the end of the tour last year, I was writing new material for this upcoming tour. Sometimes the set was like an hour 10, hour 15. And of that, probably 15 minutes would be crowd work and an hour would be jokes. GQ was curious. I feel like I don't see much of your traditional stand-up on TikTok. Do crowd work clips just work better? Lucas said, I think the biggest thing is to stay in front of people's faces. You just have to put out so much content. Jokes take so long to write. I'll put out chunks of material, but very selectively. And frankly, I probably won't put out any more material until I'm ready to release an hour-long special, which I think I want to give that a few more years. Stand-up has changed so much. And by most definitions, I'm very new. I'm about to hit my 5-year anniversary. But I put out 10 minutes of material with Don't Tell and another 10 with Comedy Central, so I've put out 20 minutes, and then the rest has been pretty much crowd work. GQ said TikTok crowd work comics are kind of a genre now. Are you resentful of the label? Lucas said, what I feel is overwhelmingly grateful for the fact that I can perform for crowds of people who come to see me, and the notion of sitting in my house resenting who my fan base is or who I'm referred to is pretty insane, given that it's enabled me to do my passion, get overpaid for it, and be here at 12:13 p.m. on a Thursday talking to you. So I hope when people watch my comedy, whether it's crowd work or material, I'm able to convey what I'm trying to convey, which is who I am. And I hope that comes off as someone who's intelligent, thoughtful, not too frequently leaning into hacky things or trite ways of making people laugh, subverting the expectations of where people typically make jokes, whether that's in their written material or crowd work. Lucas says, I think in a perfect world, my career could look something like John Mulaney's career, which is to say involvement as an actor in TV while still always doing stand-up and touring. Mulaney is very much primarily still a stand-up, but touring's just personally very challenging, traveling as much as I do. So I think in the full course of time, I'd like to have different outlets. My view is everything you should say should be really funny, and you shouldn't be making points to make points, but I have points I want to make. I think I'd just rather make them in TV or film rather than be on stage and be like, now let's get real for a second. I don't want to be that guy ever. I'm not looking to be staffed in a writer's room right now, but if the SNL cast decides they want another mediocre white guy who's decent looking, I'll give you my phone number and you can have them reach out to me. Shane Moss, known for his uncanny description of psychedelic experiences, tapes his next special today at the Perplexiplex in Denver. Great name. The Washington Post spoke to Ben Schwartz about improv. He says audience members ask him the same question time and time again. Is it scripted? Schwartz says, literally, not a word of this is written. That's almost the fun part when someone is like, I can't believe you just made that up, or they think it's magic. He explains it's about balance. If one improviser specializes in broad characters and physical comedy, Schwartz might combine them with more cerebral comics. As the evening's MC, he takes it upon himself to facilitate the scenes, play to his guest strengths, and keep the show moving with savvy edits. So those are moments when a scene is interrupted or ended. He says it's like picking a basketball team and finding your point guard, your center, your small forward. On the Ben Schwartz and Friends tour, the go-to prompt has been, tell us about the most exciting day or night of your life. There's 3,000 people in these audiences. It's a lot of pressure. Some of the things I do at the beginning of the show are very much to make the audience feel comfortable, to tell them, we got this. I know it's nerve-wracking because we don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be good, and it's going to be a good time. As for the audience, Schwartz notes an overexcited patron is often not the best choice. As soon as someone starts telling their answer, Schwartz can tell almost immediately if it's a story worth following or if he should gently move on to someone else. Specific characters are great, an intricate narrative is better, but he keeps an eye out for detours. Perhaps a detail that the audience member glosses over, but Schwartz recognizes as curious enough to pursue. Whatever they say, I'm listening to every syllable. As the show finds a rhythm, Schwartz monitors the audience's enthusiasm while deciding which gags to double down on. Around the halfway point, they start looking for references from earlier in the show to call back on. As they head towards the hour mark, they work overtime to weave together the show's disparate threads, no matter how wildly, delightfully far they may have strayed from the original premise. Schwartz tells the Washington Post, I look at the clock and we're around 55 minutes. That's around the time where I'll be like, let's start calling everything back. Let's see if we can connect. Sometimes the stuff you've been building connects perfectly and you can call back everything and every character, and it almost looks like it was perfectly written. The biggest thing for me is to try and make everybody look funny, everybody look good on stage, and to give the audience something great. Francesca Duva is one of Vulture's comedians you should and will know. Worst show ever? A very long time ago, I was in college. I was in a sketch group that I thought was amazing. We were invited to perform at some kind of parent weekend event with other campus groups. The venue was a cafeteria, which is tough to begin with. And then very few parents actually came. The ones who did were mostly parents of children who were in one of the mostly amazing dance groups that were also performing. We did a couple sketches we thought were our best, and not a single parent laughed. It was silence for 10 minutes. It was so hard for me, seriously, because I love parents. My whole life, I love winning the approval of people's parents and making them laugh. And that day, they all stared at me with disgust, like I was some weird random girl. It was just sad. And I learned a tough lesson at that show, which is, I should have been a dancer. And that's your comedy news for today. If you enjoy the program, tell a friend about it. They might like it too. If you would like the program without commercial interruption, there's a link in the show notes that'll tell you how that works. $5 a month is the short version there. See you tomorrow.